I'm going to be going into an Iyslander matchup and I'm going to be facing Fi. I thought I'd record some of my Talishar gameplay because I really like playing Iyslander and I consider her my main flesh and blood hero, but I thought it would help with both me and other people if I could record my gameplay, analyse it, go over it again, see any mistakes I made or see what plays I made which other people might not even consider, and go from there really. So because this is my first video, I'm going to talk briefly about the list. It is basically Michael Hamilton's Iyslander list from Worlds. It has all the threats that Michael Hamilton run in that competition. There are a few changes, however. I don't own a Heart of Findle and I also don't really see the value in buying one, so I decided to put a third hypothermia in. It's also really good against Dash, which is a new meta staple since Worlds because of Dynasty's release. I also don't run Blue Brothers Norms. I've tried this card many times and I always find that it ends up being pitched. If it's ever blocked with, half of the time it comes in as a 2 block, which is extremely awkward. It also makes keeping Channel Link Frigid around harder, and you really don't want to get this thing in your arsenal. So I decided to put Winter's Bite in because I find that the card is extremely useful against aggro decks and it can catch basically anyone off guard because everyone expects to get one Frostbite on their turn against Iyslander. People rarely expect to have to pay through 2 taxes. It can also be very effective to be used on your turn, so you can play this and it has go again, forces the opponent to discard or pay a cost, and then you throw a large attack at them, taxing their hand even further if they want to block it. So playing Iyslander, like any other hero, the gameplay starts with the sideboarding. You've got to realise which cards are not necessary in the matchup, which are actively detrimental, say no blocks that might hurt you against Fi, for instance. Equipment, you got to realise what can you use, what will you not get the best usage out of. So against Fi, equipment wise, we're going to take an Iron Rock Gauntlet because that allows you to block a breakpoint at the end of a chain, say a Snatch, which effectively would save you upwards of 5 life sometimes, because they won't have the arsenal for next turn. The strategy against Fi is just going to be try and get efficient damage on him, try and race, try and disrupt and get the life totals down as quickly as possible so you can eventually Storm Striders to kill him. Fis usually don't run a lot of Arcane Barrier, it's usually 1. They usually come with Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, Tiger Stripe Shuko. I've seen a lot of Flamescale Furnaces against Iyslander, but I feel like that's incorrect. If they have Tunic in the sideboard, that should be the first option in the chest slot, because what Tunic would allow you to do against Iyslander is basically, if Iyslander ever wants to use Coronet Peak, Tunic can just pay for that instead of an actual full card, which is an insane amount of value for the Fi, and it really limits what Iyslander's options are going into her turn. The boot slot is usually where the Arcane Barrier comes in. They should be running Tide Flippers because they are almost Snapdragon Scalers with an Arcane Barrier on the end. You can give Salt the Wound, you can give Lava Bursts, go again, but mainly it's there for the Arcane Barrier. So what the Fi would usually be doing is, if Iyslander would hit Fi with a fused Ice Vein, Fi could pitch a blue if they have one, pay for the Arcane Barrier, block 1 damage, and then pay for the discard trigger or pay trigger with the remaining 2 resources. It's just a more efficient way to deal with that and could save the Fi 3 health over the course of the game. So I've selected the Ninja sideboard, which pre-selects the cards that I need, apart from 3. I chose the Winter's Bite here. We really don't need the Frost Hex combo or hypothermia, because hypothermia only affects unnatural go again. There are a few unnatural go agains in 5, but if they're thinking about it, they should really be playing around hypothermia, in which case it will basically only provide a frostbite. So just waiting for my opponent to finish sideboarding. I chose to let the opponent go first because Fi usually wants to push damage and gain tempo by going second, and I was very glad to see that the opponent chose to pass straight away, because I ended up with 2 no blocks in my hand. The hand just turns out to be quite good on the offense though. I can play an Amulet of Ice with go again and then throw an attack, leave me with just 1 card which can go into the arsenal. I misplay here by using the Blizzard instead of Arsenal Leap because I was not concentrating. So now the opponent knows I have a Blizzard. Since they already know I've got a Blizzard, I decide to just use it, because no matter what happens, they're going to be playing around it. Also, they're about to gain 5 resources for the turn. There's an argument to say save the Blizzard, but I decided to use it since it's already known information. Blizzard still taxes them for 3 resources, so hopefully makes their turn a little weaker. So my main goal here would be to, first of all, block out this Mask of Momentum trigger, because it's the 3rd chain link that would hit, and I've used a breakpoint. That's where the Ironrock Gauntlet comes in handy. Usually I would save that for a snatch, but Mask of Momentum trigger is scary enough to block out. I don't anticipate him getting to another 3 fresh links. It is possible though if his arsenal's 0 cost. So he doesn't play his arsenal, he passes, and I have a fused Ice Vein. Anytime you can cast a fused Ice Vein at an aggro deck, that's just exactly what you should be doing. Each card in Fi's hand makes their turn exponentially more painful for you, because they have AoE buffs like Art of War and Spreading Flames. You really don't want to be letting them have a 5-card hand whenever possible. So the opponent makes a mistake and reverts the turn back to the start of his prior turn, so we're just going to play it out in the same order. Which gives me a chance to talk about his equipment setup. Mask of Momentum, I don't agree with against Iyslander. I think Mask of Momentum you take into a matchup where you don't think the opponent wants to block. Iyslander's pretty fine with blocking with 1 or 2 cards. She can still do a lot of good stuff with just 2 cards, 3 cards. Opponent also brought a B2, which I found interesting and a little bit worrying, because that does actually end up meaning that the game drags on for a lot longer than you would expect. So we just play out the turn in the exact same way, which is only fair. I was sort of regretting the Ironrock Gauntlet block at first, but after seeing that he can only get to 5 links and not trigger the Mask of Momentum twice. I am very glad that I chose the line that I did. So I'm fusing the Aether Ice Vein with a Winter's Bite. He knows I'll have a Winter's Bite. Whether he can play around that is a different matter. Also, every time I fuse an Ice Vein or any fusion, I can think about this Amulet of Ice. So I like to think about what the opponent's turn usually is going to look like, look at what they discard for the Ice Vein, and then think, what can they do with the remaining 4 cards, say? Does the discard give me any clues about what's in their hand? I think they would keep a blue against an Iyslander, especially if you've just revealed Winter's Bite. It's quite smart to be keeping resources to pay for your turn. I decide not to use the Amulet of Ice here because I anticipate he would pitch a blue and play a 1 cost, and then follow up with a 0 cost, so that would only really stop him from using the weapon. He actually goes with Enlightened Strike, go again. A little bit greedy to use the go again instead of +2. 7 damage is perfectly adequate. I would say the go again is the least efficient option on E-Strike, and it opens you up to a bit of disruption. So he's saving 2 resources, floating 1 card in hand, 1 Frostbite. I decide to use Sink Below because I don't think he's going to throw anything large at me, larger than 3 anyway. Yeah, so he does Flame Scale Awakening, which usually costs 1, costs him all of his resources. So now I know exactly how many attacks he's going to be doing this turn, because there's no floating resources and he has a Phoenix Flame in hand, which means he can trigger Mask of Momentum. So I should think about blocking this, and I do. I decide to block with the blue because Aether Ice Vein Red is one of the highest quality cards in the deck, especially against Defy. And thinking about Frosting, it's a little bit lackluster. Yes, you can play it from the arsenal on their turn, deal 1 damage, give them a Frostbite. However, I did think that more impactful card in the arsenal would be better, so I saved the Ice Vein for the arsenal. It also gives me the option to trigger the amulet when I do play it. So I'm keeping the life totals fairly even. It's quite important that you don't fall too far behind. Fight is capable of huge turns, especially if you haven't arsenaled any disruption like I just haven't. So I'm not a massive fan of the hand I just drew. There's no ice cards, so I can't fuse this Ice Vein from arsenal on my turn. So looking at this hand, I think I've disconnected a little bit here. And then I didn't notice, didn't notice that it was my priority for a bit. Anyway, looking at this hand, I'm thinking about keeping 2 cards because of the arsenal slot is already taken up. I also have 3 cards which block for 3. So the first thing to get rid of would be the Yellow Ice Vein, because because that doesn't pitch for the Wounded Bull, and I also have a red Ice Vein already. So he uses Snatch here, but I've noticed that he already has a card in hand and he hasn't got to go again. He hasn't got any floating resources or a tunic, so he can't raise a reflex me. There's not many cards which he can play to punish me not blocking fully this Snatch, so I decide not to. He draws the card, but it doesn't ultimately mean much. He just gets to choose which of the two cards is best to put into the arsenal. So I throw a Wounded Bull for 8 and he takes it all, which is expected. So I did draw 3 blues and 2 of them are ice cards, so I can definitely use this Aether Ice Vein on my turn. And then arsenal one of the ice blues. I've got a tunic counter up, which sort of opens up my options if I want to arsenal this blue ice bolt. Usually you don't want to arsenal a 2 cost unless you have a tunic counter, unless it's Channel Frigid, because that card is absolutely insane. So he uses his Art of War, which pushes his 3s to 4, which is a little bit annoying because now I can't fully block out with 1 card. So I decide to wait until link 3 to see if I can block with 2 cards more efficiently. And he decides to banish his Lava Burst from the Rising Resentment, making it cost 0, -1 even, which means if I did have any taxes he could still cast it. Say 1 Frostbite, he could still play the Lava Burst. So he comes in with a nice clean 6 and an on-hit, so I get very happy to block with 2 cards. But looking at his whole hand, he didn't really have a good option. To play around that. So I take the Lava Burst. It's important to realise that you need to take some damage to do something back. If you don't ever do anything back, if you're just blocking and blocking against fire, you will eventually just leak enough damage and die. So I use my red Ice Vein fused. I decide to hang on to the Ice Bolt because the opponent's getting very low. And I thought if he blocks some here, that's good for me. If he doesn't block any, that puts him to 10. So an Ice Bolt from Arsenal, a Waning Boon, and then a Storm Striders with a 4 damage could kill him if he ends up not having any resources left on his turn to block out. Just to refresh to make sure that the game is working. I decided to use the Amulet of Ice here because I don't know if I'm ever going to get another chance. The game looks like it won't go on any longer, well, much longer. So he pitches his Art of War to pay for the Amulet of Ice, which I think is the correct play because Art of War isn't exactly the best card on a small hand. So he's opening up with a Mounting Anger, and I'm thinking about playing this Ice Bolt from Arsenal. Because Mounting Anger can't banish anything, so If I don't want to block it, I don't need to. However, I might want to make his weapon cost 3. Or his next thing cost 3. What more? He does have a tunic counter up, so what I decided to do is pay for this ice bolt with a red and a tunic counter, because there's no way I can efficiently use both of these reds. However, I can use a red and a blue, and then Arsenal the Channel 8 Frigid, which is one of the better cards against Fi. However, at this life total, I would rather it was a damage spell, but you do what you can with what you've got. So yeah, decide not to block any of this, because he doesn't even have a card in hand to buff. And I should have been aware of this, I wasn't tracking, but he does have a Phoenix Flame in Arsenal, and that's from a few turns ago. So you generally don't want to go to 1 against 5, because that means any Phoenix Flame can kill you. But a block with a tunic now, or a block with a tunic next turn, is the same thing. But the tunic might get to 3 counters again, so you're better off just saving it. So I throw my Finals Fighting Spirit, heal me for 1, and go ahead and Arsenal the Channel 8 Frigid. He blocks pretty much fully, which I was a little bit disappointed to see. It probably means he's going to drag the game out a little bit. And I drew into a hand that cannot possibly kill the opponent, so I'm just thinking about the priority of cards I should play. Should I play Channel 8 Frigid now? And I do. I hang on to a no block in Blizzard. Everything else blocks 2, so it's not exactly brilliant for me. But I'm thinking Blizzard could just stop the turn if needed. Or it could just be used to bait for Coronet Peak. I'm trying to think about keeping this Winter's Bite to play it on my turn. But I think I want to Arsenal the Cold Snap, because that can draw me into damage, or it can just be very efficient 3 damage and a Frostbite for a blue. So I take a little bit of a risky play, keeping this Blizzard but not using it. And he can pay for the weapon, which is a bit unfortunate. So I'm forced to block with something else. I'm forced to block with Coronet Peak, because I really do want to hang on to this Cold Snap for the Arsenal. Which unfortunately means this Blizzard is going to end up doing absolutely nothing. So I decide to pitch it for Winning Moon, because at least it can get in 3 damage. It's very bad. See, I've got 2 resources floating, so Blizzard effectively only gave me 1 resource. And Channel 8 Frigid has absolutely no way of sticking around. I've drawn to a little bit of damage. Emeritus Scalding, and I can use Winning Moon for 7. But given that the opponent's on Arcane Barrier 2, I have to be very respectful of that. So I pitched a 2 block, which gives me more options if I need to block any of his attacks, which I probably do because I'm on 1 life. So I block here with the Finals Fighting Spirit, and that is essentially a 3 block because it heals me for 1 because I'm lower. But it does mean belittle hits. However, he's not got his Mask of Momentum anymore, so I don't have to worry about any draws. Also, if anything hits, I do die, so... So Blaze Headlong, but I'm very fortunate I drew into the sink below. So I can 1 card, block it. So at this point I'm thinking about what can I use on my turn. It would be very inefficient to use the Emeritus Scalding, pitching a blue on my turn, so I'm thinking about keeping this Frosting and using that on my turn. It's 1 damage, it's not a lot, but it's not nothing either. Especially when he's on 4. But it turns out he can use the weapon. So I just end up blocking with the Frosting. And he's got 1 card remaining, no Frostbites, so if that is a 0 cost, Blaze Headlong or Snatch, I do die. But there's no way to play around it. So he ends up pitching for the hero ability, and he had 3 blues this turn. Off the Minnowism as well. So at this point I'm just looking at his Arcane Barrier and hoping he doesn't have another turn following this with 3 blues, because I really need to kill him this turn. If he presents any breakpoints, I can't possibly live. So what I do is I will block with my worst card, keeping as many resources as possible so I can kill him in response. And he's got 1 card left, so I just have to hope that it's not a blue. Since he's presenting a breakpoint of 4, blocking with 2 cards is not going to win me the game. He even says no blue, sad. He got all his blues last turn though. So that was the matchup against Fi. You really want to not be on 1 health against Fi for very long, because they're essentially going to Phoenix Flame lock you, taking a real card for their Phoenix Flame, and essentially build tempo by doing that. So thank you for watching. I will say it's very hard to commentate in real time on gameplay videos, and I'll hopefully get better at doing that. If you liked, I'll make some more videos, Iyslander gameplay, maybe some Arachne gameplay, and I'll hopefully improve each time and learn new things. Video editing is very new to me, so yeah, we'll see what happens. See you around.